Welcome to the lecture on Chapter 1, Thinking and Writing, a Critical Connection. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at a couple of different things. The meaning of critical thinking, the role our worldview plays in thinking and writing, the need to consider audience and purpose, the role metaphor plays in critical thinking and writing, and the role reasoning by analogy plays in our persuasive writing. So let's take a look at how writing is defined. Writing is thinking made visible. Writing about ideas can help clarify them. Writing can also create ideas or lead you in new directions. Language can give birth to thoughts. And writing can be manipulated and refined, unlike speech. What exactly do we mean by critical thinking? Well, critical thinking is discerning or discriminating thought characterized by careful analysis and judgment. So what does that mean exactly? Well, essentially it means that you must be confident and secure in taking apart your cherished beliefs or anyone else's cherished beliefs and using reasoning and evidence to state a new claim. We have to keep an open mind even when the evidence goes against our cherished beliefs. To have an open mind is to listen attentively to the views of others. However, we must defend ourselves against false claims, questionable judgments, and confusing arguments. We discover that when we become critical thinkers, we realize that it's important to examine our own fixed beliefs. Ideas are social things. Ideas do not develop according to some inner logic of their own, but are entirely dependent, like germs, on their human carriers and on the environment. We also have an inborn tendency to filter out information that doesn't match our biases or our fixed beliefs. And we are inclined to remember news that matches our own worldview. In each of these cases, we must be vigilant to be sure that we're not clinging to these beliefs in the face of evidence that contradicts it. This chapter introduces the concept of hedgehogs and foxes. The fox knows many little things, and the hedgehog knows one big thing. According to Berlin, hedgehogs view the world through a single lens, or dominant idea, while foxes base their worldview on a wide variety of experiences. As such, foxes are less rigid and more pragmatic. They're more aware of complexity and nuance. Questioning our worldview can be one of the most challenging steps in our growth as critical thinkers, but it's probably one of the most important ones. We need to be comfortable with chaos and contradiction. Please take a moment to view this short video on critical thinking. The link is here in the slide, but it is also in the Module 1 folder in the eClassroom. Let's take a few slides to examine the writing process. It's important to note that writing is a process. There are defined steps, it's complex, and it's difficult and takes time. We must discard the 5-paragraph essay format. The rigid structure prevents writers from exploring their topic fully. Quote, good writers do not produce a perfect, polished product in one sitting. It takes revision and editing to get to a suitable final product. That is a big misconception for new writers, and it's one we must discard. When we look at the tasks of writing, it's important to break them down into individual steps so they are more manageable and don't seem overwhelming. The list on this slide includes things like generating ideas and conducting research, essay organization, transitions, polishing for fluency, and correcting grammar. It's important to note that this is not a linear list. We can move around in this list as we prepare our essay, and that's perfectly fine. There are 3 broad stages in the writing process: the creating, the shaping, and the correcting. And all of these pieces fit into the tasks of writing on the previous slide. It's important not to focus on the last stage at the beginning. You must give enough time to the creation stage to gather information and generate ideas. The writer must experience confusion and be comfortable with chaos, as I said before, as you learn about new topics and explore all of these things. Most writers find that getting started is the hardest part. These 2 methods, brainstorming and free writing can help you get started. Brainstorming means to put the topic of writing assignment at the top of your screen or paper. Just jot down words or phrases that come to mind as you think about your topic. Once you're finished, circle the ideas that you wish to develop and that seem relevant. Free writing is very similar. You begin with your topic and write continuously, using sentences, and you just write for a set length of time, for example, 10 minutes. These two methods are relatively painless ways to begin a writing project. Keep in mind that critical evaluation of your writing is necessary, but not at this stage in the process. It's important to remember, as Anne Lamott tells us in her essay The Child's Draft on page 9, that all writers create a shitty first draft. It's just part of the writing process, and it's perfectly fine. All writers have them, experienced and inexperienced, and they are a necessary part of the process of writing. Because all writers struggle to find a way to express their thoughts so the reader will understand. Once we create our draft, then it's the time to be critical, to be discerning and discriminating. When the first draft is complete, the job of writing has only just begun. It is typical for students to think that their first draft is their final draft, but we will take our drafts through the peer edit and revision process in this course. If you find a bit of your writing awkward, it is likely your reader will too. And sometimes the writing of your first draft will tell you when you need to do a little more research or expand your explanation or do some fact-checking. Your job as a writer is to consider your audience and the purpose of your essay. All good persuasive writing is built on a balance between knowledge of the subject, an identified audience, and a defined purpose. Without these three pieces in place, your essay will seem disorganized and incoherent. All successful arguments use the essential triad listed here. Each one of these appeals can be successful if used correctly. Logos is the use of reason to persuade. Ethos is the use of one's own character and credibility to persuade. For example, if you have a PhD in chemistry and you're talking about something that has to do with chemistry, then you seem more credible. And pathos is the use of emotional appeals to persuade the audience. Pathos is very popular for political campaign ads, for example. And it is important to note that to write convincingly, you must present yourself as a reasonable, sympathetic person, and you must be well disposed toward your readers. You do not want to sound combative. It is the case that we vary our language depending on to whom we are speaking. We speak one way when we're around our friends, we speak another way to our parents, a different way to our boss, and another way to our professors. It's important that you, in a professional setting, don't use slang or internet speak. It's best to use standard, edited, written English when you're in those types of settings. Please do exercise 1B on page 13. Please send this email to my Gmail account. Follow the instructions carefully. Don't get the wrong idea, however. Critical thinking in writing doesn't mean boring. Metaphor is a figure of speech that helps us understand one thing in terms of another. It welcomes originality, personal opinion, embraces ambiguity and paradox, and creativity. Read the essay Poetry for Everyday Life by David Brooks on page 16. Please do exercise 1C on page 17. Please post the answer to these 3 questions about metaphor in the discussion board in Module 1. Reasoning by analogy is a comparison of 2 or more things, just like metaphor is. However, it is explicit and not suggestive. It is also an important tool in your toolbox for your persuasive writing. Let's summarize briefly what we covered in this chapter. Clear, critical thinking is directly related to writing well. When we write, we need to think about audience and purpose, and remember, we must not be combative. We need to fully use the writing process and avoid formulaic structures like the 5x5 essay. We need to not rush the final draft, and this is very important. As we continue, you'll see more how writing and critical thinking are interrelated.